Joining me on the FloBowling podcast is Dom Barrett. Dom has 6 PBA titles, including 1 major, the 2012-2013 World Series of Bowling 5 PBA World Championship, which was held that year in Las Vegas. Dom, it's Tim Burg here. Thank you for joining me today.
Great. Thanks very much for having me.
All right, Dom. Well, you're in the Chicagoland area. You're there for the PBA Extra Frame Parkside Lanes Open. You just finished up with your practice session. First off, how did things go in the practice session, and how are you planning on attacking both of these oil patterns that you'll be bowling on Saturday and Sunday?
Yes, it's been pretty good. So most of my preparation, even before the practice session, it all starts at home. It starts about a week to 10 days before the event. So today's kind of about fine-tuning what I've been trying to practice and trying to whatever I've been, like what I've been honing on right now is more about sort of my release, getting my hand in the right position, trying to use my legs a little bit more, stuff like that. I'm 33 soon, getting on a little bit more than some of the younger guys out here. So trying to find a way to use my body a little bit better, I suppose, and just to make sure that when I actually get out here and we go have the official practice session, everything still fires the way I want it to. So it just kind of gets me ready for tomorrow when we actually start competing.
And then the fact that you guys are bowling on 2 different patterns on Saturday and Sunday, do you kind of have stuff kind of maybe for each of them? Is that how the mindset of a lot of the pros is? You'll go in with kind of an open mind, but obviously thinking, I may need this for Saturday and I may need this for Sunday?
I think that's why in the practice session, we look for anything that's kind of standing out. If there's anything that's either like a real discrepancy in the patterns, which might be in the scoring pace. One might be really high, one might be really low. But both patterns that I bowled on today felt actually quite difficult. So I think the scoring is going to be pretty similar on both patterns. And that actually makes for a pretty good event, which means if you bowl bad on one day and good on the next day, then that kind of evens out and you don't miss out on some really high scores or you have really low scores. So I think it's going to be pretty hard on both patterns. But like you said, I think it's about going into both days with a pretty open mindset, trying to figure out the practice session tomorrow for the pattern that we're bowling on, and just trying to make, from what I saw today, they both felt fairly difficult. So that's kind of refreshing a little bit because some of the patterns we've been bowling have been quite high scoring, and the fact that we've had a few weeks away from competing, it's kind of nice to go in and have a bit of a grind. You can build your way into bowling good without missing out on bowling these 250s, 260 games that you have to do to keep up.
Dom, your 2018 season started off with a bang, winning the Japan Cup. How would you address the rest of your season, and how would you rate your performance, and what are you working on in your game?
Yeah, so January was great for me when we were in Japan and won the Japan Cup. So I'm a guy who likes to watch a lot of sports, and I kind of follow most sports, especially sort of individual, but obviously I'm a big soccer guy too, being from England. But I think I got myself into a position in Japan to win, and everything kind of clicked mentally, and that went through being physical as well to being able to throw the right shots at the right time to be able to win. And I think even before that, I'm not sure I've been throwing the ball as good as I could have been. And after, for sure, I would have liked to have kind of kicked on from that win, which never really happened. So, like I said, the last month or so, I've been kind of back at the drawing board. I didn't bowl too well in May, so trying to figure out why I didn't bowl very well in May, what I can do to bowl better. Like I said just before, my sort of keys about using my legs a little bit more, trying to get my swing plane in the right place. The stuff I've been working on at home to try and bring myself out into these next few events to try and kick on a little bit. But the start of the season was fantastic, winning that event, and it set me up really well. But I definitely felt like I would have liked to have kicked on a bit further on from that win than I had.
And Dom, the last few months have been quite crazy to be following the PBA news that's going on. First, you had the news of the TV rights moving from ESPN to Fox Sports. That was big. And then we also had the news within the last month or two, with a little over a month, regarding Flo Sports coming in and FloBowling coming in and picking up the streaming rights. And Flo's really going to work on introducing people to Dom Barrett, introducing people to stars of the PBA like yourself. And what does that all mean for bowling? And it seems like it's a great time to be shoeing up now in the PBA.
I think that's brilliant. Not just about me, but for bowling in general. I think we had the great news about Fox Sports, and that kind of just kept coming when we heard about FloBowling. and Flow Sports coming in to take over Extra Frame. And, being international, being from England, I remember when I was a 17-year-old kid learning how to bowl, trying to figure out what I need to do to become a better bowler, just so I could get to a stage where I could be good enough to play for my country, play for my state. It was a big deal, really, for me then. And I was watching what used to be called Strike Pass, so it was kind of Extra Frame before it was Extra Frame. And it kind of went away from there. It was almost ahead of its time back then for the internet and everything else. But I was watching it back home, early hours in the morning sometimes with the time difference, trying to pick my favourite bowlers, and they were my idols for that day. I would go home and then I was already home, but then the next day I would go and practice and try and be like Norm Duke, Pete Webber, Steve Hoskins, Steve Jarrett, these guys who kind of idolised watching them on the internet. And this is, a good 16, 17 years ago I used to do this. So moving on from there into what Extra Frame brought us and kind of revitalising Strike Pass, because it was so far ahead of its time that I used to watch, and then taking that to the kids at home, the families at home that wanted to watch bowling, and then now moving into Flow Sports and just being able to grow such a bigger audience, which obviously means, for me as a professional bowler, that creates a lot more opportunities. It creates a lot more of a bigger demographic for people to come into bowling and come in to see, what I'm about, what Sean Rash is about, what Jason Belmonte is about. And you can really see and understand our stories and how we got to where we are. And I think, like I said before, I really love sports and I love understanding how the top athletes work, because, that's what I strive to be. And I know the reason why I strive to be like that is because that's how I was when I was a kid. So when you have these kids watching professional bowling, getting to understand how we get to where we are right now, it isn't that far from where they are. And they, it kind of just evolves a bit further, and then you follow and you kind of follow people's stories. And I think for Flow Sports to come in and to do that for us is a great opportunity for bowling, and something that I'm, very thankful for. And we always talk about trying to get back into bowling and into people's lives, so they can come back and follow the professionals, because we remember, just a few years ago, that's where we were. And Flow Sports, Flow Bowling is going to help with that so much, and we're very thankful for that as a professional.
Well, you mentioned growing up watching the stars of the PBA. You mentioned, I'm seeing that your bowling hero was Chris Barnes, and now you're out there getting to compete against Chris Barnes. What does that mean for you, and what have you been able to pick up from Chris and watching him bowling and being out there on tour with him?
So one of the best bits of advice I ever got was go out there and, if you do something you're not quite sure of, give someone a compliment and ask them what they think that you should do better. Like, that was the best bit of advice I got. This was back in the European Tour. Stu Williams, another Englishman, actually told me that to go. That's what he heard. And I used to literally go up to, it's kind of like a cheeky little English guy. I would walk up to the better bowlers. I would be in awe of them, of what they just did in the lanes when I might have struggled in the European Tour. I know there was one story of Pasi Juotila from Finland. And I went up to him and I said, Pasi, let me buy you a beer. I think what you've just done on the lane's amazing. I really struggled when the lanes transitioned in such a way. Let me buy you a beer. And we sat down. I said, okay, what did you do? And then he would tell me what he did, and also give me advice on what I should do and stuff like that. And I kind of took that a long way into asking people like Pasi, Mika Koivuniemi, and then from European guys into people like Chris. And then eventually got to a point where they wouldn't give me any advice anymore. But at that point also, I was kind of figuring it out for myself a little bit. And because of the way I learnt through bowling, through guys like Chris, like Mika, like Pasi, and even like Stu, who's only a couple of years ahead of me from the English circuit, I've always felt like I should pass that back on to the younger generations, even though, they kind of beat me and they're great bowlers. But I just want to see the sport evolve. I'm a big fan of bowling as well. I want to see the bowling that I compete in, that we see, that you guys see at home, evolve into a top sport. And to do that would be for everyone to get better and to create more excitement. So I still do it now. I still can't help myself but try and help the younger generations get better, even though they're beating me, because I want to see bowling evolve so much more than, than where it was 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Dom, with record heat in the Chicagoland area, what are you doing to combat some of that and kind of get yourself acclimated to the conditions inside the bowling center?
Yeah, that's a great question, and actually it comes at a great time because the proprietor who I was just sat with before here at Parkside Lanes, he was outside today buying humidifiers because it's so humid in the bowling centre because of the heat that the approaches are the tackiest they've ever been, and it's kind of inconsistent around the doors. So the proprietors that we that put on the tournaments for us go out of their way to try and make the best possible environment for us to compete in. And right now it is a bit of a pain, but we do have a couple of approach issues that I'm sure you'll see over the FloBowling over the next couple of days. But everyone's going out of their way to try and fix it for us and to try and make it a little bit better. But I know that anybody watching at home over the next couple of days is going to see us go through a few issues just because the environment changes so much, because of humidity, because of the heat. But as pros, that's just something that we have to deal with, and we're really thankful for the proprietors. Thankful for Kurt to try and go out there and try and help us out with everything.
Dom, with you and your wife Cassie expecting your first child, have any of the PBA dads reached out to you and given you any fatherly advice on what to do? Maybe Stu Williams, since he's a new dad with his son Brady, Ryan Simonelli perhaps. And what are you doing also as well to prepare for the birth of your child?
Well, I kind of I've planned my schedule around it a little bit. I'm going to miss a couple of events sort of late August, early September. So hopefully the baby doesn't come too soon. But we're really looking forward to it. We've got to a point where my wife she's fantastic. Cassie's unbelievable. So she's the most organised person that I've ever met. She's very independent. And when I get home, I just try to help out, really. I try not to get in the way too much. And kind of just getting everything ready for the baby. So I'm really looking forward to being a dad. And my wife is going to make that a pretty easy job for me, hopefully, touch wood. But, it's just another sort of element to our home personal life that's going to make it harder for me to be on the road so much. But it's kind of the next evolution for us. And like you said about Stu, and you see Stu with his son and his wife, and it's just nice that, and Martin, Larson, Nosku, Palermo, we all grew up without, knowing each other, as we were kind of getting together with our partners even before we were married and stuff like that. So it's nice that we've kind of evolved all together. They've got a couple of kids all between them. I know Martin's got 2 girls. Nosku obviously has his girl as well, and Stu has his boy, all kind of at different ages. And it's nice for me to sort of not be behind it all, but just everything evolved within that as friends and within that sort of bowling family, which we're all a part of.
Dom, I want to thank you for joining me today. I know we caught up just shortly after your practice session, so thank you for that. By the way, appreciate you making some time and letting the FloBowling listeners here on this podcast into some of the things that you're working on and what's going on in your game and in your life even. So thank you for that. You can catch Dom and all the PBA stars this weekend. PBA Extra Frame, Parkside Lanes Open, everything on FloBowling.com. Check it out there. And Dom, we'll catch up with you down the road.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me on.